Darth Plagueis was the Sith master of Darth Sidious before his rise to the position of Chancellor of the Republic. Plagueis was a very wealthy banker who went by the name Hego Damask and was a member of one of the most powerful banking clans in the galaxy, Damask Holdings. I'm going to break down how Darth Plagueis was almost assassinated by some of the most skilled assassins in the galaxy while attending a secret cult meeting for the rich and famous people of the galaxy. Before we get into it, remember to subscribe for more awesome Star Wars lore content. I've also just released a new line of awesome Sith holocron merch for you guys, so if you're interested in picking that up, make sure you click the link in the description and pinned comment down below. Also, use the discount code ORDER66 for 10% off. So after many long years of performing business deals, lobbying politicians and doing very dodgy things with his banking clan, Darth Plagueis was invited to watch one of his associates, Larsh Hill, who was the father of Sand Hill from Revenge of the Sith, be invited to join a secret cult of rich businessmen known as the Order of the Canted Circle. Plagueis himself was invited to join the group many years prior, but declined the offer in fear of giving away his true Sith identity. As they arrived at the secret cult meeting in an ancient tower near the political district of Coruscant, something dark and chilling occurred. I'll read to you a page out of the Darth Plagueis novel, which details exactly how Plagueis was almost assassinated and barely held on to his life. Just for a bit of context, 114D is Darth Plagueis' droid, who he is very fond of, just like R2-D2 is to Anakin. So here it is. From a series of arch-topped doorways lining the circumference of the room came the sounds of solemn chanting as perhaps 36 of the Order's black-robed members began to file in and take their places along the perimeter of the Canted Circle. Last to emerge was the High Official, who wore a mask and carried the circular emblematic pendant draped over both hands, which he held as if in prayer. Rituals of a similar sort had been enacted by the ancient Sith, Plagueis thought, as Larsh Hill genuflected before the High Official. At the same instant Hill's right knee touched the polished stone, a jangle of foreboding laddered up Plagueis' spine. Turning ever so slightly, he saw that 114D had rotated its head toward him. In a gesture Plagueis had come to associate with alarm. The dark side fell over him like a shroud, but instead of acting on impulse, he restrained himself, fearful of betraying his true nature prematurely. In that instant of hesitation, time came to a standstill and several events happened at once. The High Official gave a downward tug to the pendant he had placed around Hill's neck, and the old Mune's head toppled from his shoulders and began to roll down the tipped stage. Wow, that's gruesome. Blood geysered from Hill's neck and his body fell to one side with a thud and began to jerk back and forth as one after another of his hearts failed. And for those of you who don't know, Munes actually have 3 hearts instead of 1, like a human would have. Yanking their hands from the roomy opposite sleeves of their robes, the hooded members of the Order made sidelong throwing motions which sent dozens of decapitator discs screaming through the air. Decapitator discs are made out of a very sharp and very hard material, designed to take a man's head off cleanly with a single throw. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd like to see decapitated discs make their way onto the big screen in a Star Wars movie. Munes to both sides of Plagueis fell to their knees, their last breaths caught in their throats. A disc buried deep in his forehead, one of the sun guards twirled in front of Plagueis like a crazed marionette, blood fountained turning to mist. Struck in at least 3 places and leaking lubricant, 114D was trying to limp to Plagueis' side when another disc whirled into its alloy body, touching off a storm of sparks and smoke. Plagueis pressed his right hand to the right side of his neck to discover that the disc had made off with a considerable hunk of his jawbone and neck, and in its cruel passing had severed his trachea and several blood vessels. He cupped the force against the injury to keep himself from lapsing into unconsciousness, but he fell to the floor regardless, with blood pumping onto the already slick stone circle. Around him, slanted in his faltering vision, the assassins had drawn vibroblades from the other sleeves of the robe and were beginning a methodical advance on the few Munes who were still standing. A hail of bolts streaked from the blaster cradled in the arms of the remaining sun guard, sweeping half a dozen hooded beings off of the rim of the circle before he himself was butchered. Again, wow, that's very dark. Tricked, Plagueis thought, as pained by the realization as he was by the wound. Outmaneuvered by a group of inferior beings who at least had the sense enough to place artfulness above arrogance. When Palpatine heard the news of the shocking attack on his master, he rushed to the location of the ritual to rescue him. As soon as Palpatine arrived on the scene, he dropped to his knees knees to check if his master was still alive. Once he confirmed that Plagueis was barely holding on to his life, he took the lightsaber off of his master's belt and began to use it to slaughter every single person keeping watch of the building who were involved in the assassination attempt. Palpatine absolutely destroyed all of the guards, shredding their chests open and taking their heads off. As I said, this book is absolutely brutal. After killing everyone inside of the building, Sidious took his master to safety, knowing that the Jedi would soon be arriving because of the huge spike in dark side energy coming from the top floor of the building. The huge amount of death and bloodshed was sure to alert the Jedi, who at this point in the timeline did not have their vision clouded by the Sith shrine under the Jedi temple. After the incident, Plagueis was forced to wear a transpirator mask for the rest of his life, as a huge part of his trachea and jawbone were now missing. The transpirator made it very difficult for Plagueis to breathe and made his voice sound similar to Darth Vader's, but not altered as much as his. So that is exactly how Plagueis lost his jaw and was almost assassinated while attending a cult meeting. If you enjoyed the video, remember to hit the subscribe button and check out my new line of merch in the description and comments down below. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.